All right. Did you know Wyc Grousbeck was this much of a minority or owned this little of the Celtics?
I will admit I did not know it was quite as stark as it turned out to be. I knew like Irv had a lot of the money, and then part of the reason why the family had the controlling interest, and Wyc was sort of the guy who was out front of everything. Certainly when you learn the percentages, it's a little jarring. But yeah, like I guess that's why I think it's hard for people to sort of wrap their head around everything that's going on. And I think part of it is like Wyc really enjoys owning this team. He's been really good owner for this team. Him and Pags and everybody in that group have been good stewards and trying to win championships. And so I think fans are wrestling with the idea of, like, look, winning is expensive, and I don't envy that position. I also know valuations of basketball teams are pretty high right now, and so they're just trying to find that balance. And I'm fascinated because it's been really quiet about this situation this summer. It's weird that like 2 days after the parade, I think it was, they're like, oh yeah, we're selling the team, and here we are 3 months later, and it still sort of doesn't feel like there's been movement, and maybe there is behind the scenes, and maybe we're just not hearing about it. But yeah, it's sort of like a roster doesn't change, but the biggest thing going into this year, I'm like, will there be a little bit of transition of power at some point, and how does that play itself out?
If they don't sell the team by the beginning of the year, is Wyc Grousbeck still going to be the mouthpiece for ownership?
Yeah, I think he'll be in that role, even potentially as the transition happens. I think until like everything is sort of signed over, he's still going to be front and center there, and probably that's But I mean, I think that's a good thing. I think he understands the responsibility that goes with it. But yeah, it's going to be weird. Like I think back, I keep talking to a lot of people down in Dallas. Like, what was it like when Mark Cuban decides to sell, and now there's like a new sort of majority owner? Like Cuban is still present and still on the sideline, but essentially there's someone there who's the owner.
But Chris, Mark Cuban was a billionaire that bought the team on his own and kind of raised it up and was, and so now. And then he sold his, part of his stake, and now he's a minority owner.
I would say like famously involved, and even if it was just window dressing of him being courtside, he was inseparable from that team.
Well, no, but he owned it at one point. He sold. He sold what he owned.
He actually,
he owned it, right? Like Wyc never owned this. Like. Isn't it kind of like if you are looking to talk to Bill Belichick when he was coach of the Patriots, but like a special teams, or Steve Belichick comes out, like, and you're like, well, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the person that really does anything. Like, how can Wyc still fill that role?
Look again, like the power. I don't know how that goes. Like when you have a meeting and when you say, I want to talk to the owner of the Celtics, like who emerges? Does Wyc do all those things? I think. And the other thing and I know you guys read the story in the New York Post too, but like the idea that if there's a lot of owners of the Celtics, right? Like that are in this ownership group, and everyone has a different sort of stake in it, but everyone has to make that decision of whether they're going to spend all this money. This doesn't feel like a one person decision. So I think there's got to be, and certainly there's a hierarchy. There's certain process that it has to go through. And so, yeah, I'm intrigued by that. Like, how does that play out? Like, and as to your point, if Wyc's still sort of the face of the franchise as they're going through this, how does that play out? And so it's weird that is the biggest question mark going into a title repeat season. But it does sort of hover over everything. And the one thing I keep wrestling with is, do I want an owner that has the sort of ties that a Wyc and a Pags do to this franchise and will, embrace sort of Boston and the Boston Celtic mystique, or do we just want the biggest pocketed owner who can afford this roster and keep this championship core together? That to me is more of the intriguing part than necessarily the reasons for why they're all selling and moving on here.
Well, it hardly matters what we want. It's what the owners want. And if they're looking at this from a business standpoint, they're going to want the person who's going to write the biggest check. My question would then be, Chris, if you're looking at the financials of the team and the luxury tax and everything else, one of the things that Wallach brought up a few minutes ago, and something I forget about all the time, is the fact that they don't own the building.
Yeah.
So is
new owners are going to want a new building.
Okay, good luck.
100%.
Yeah, but I mean, where would it go? How much is that going to cost?
Everett, Massachusetts.
Yeah,
where all new buildings go.
And was that ever a consideration when Irv and the rest of the Grousbecks had ownership of the team?
I think it's a balance, right? Because there is a little bit of a mystique with the building, and the idea is it's not the Garden, but it's still on the same sort of site, and it is incredibly accessible, even though I think we all know making our commutes in, it's not the best drive to get there.
You hate that drive. Holy moly.
Oh my God.
This is only the 8th time he's brought this up.
Yeah, you really don't like that drive.
But put it this way, the amount of love I have for Spirit Airlines is the exact amount of hate I have for how long it takes me to get from Central Massachusetts.
Yin and yang, my friend. It is the way of the universe. Continue.
Take the train.
If Spirit could get a plane from Worcester to Boston, I'd probably take it. But I do think that in the modern NBA, you have to own your own building. Like you just see every franchise doing it now. The Clippers branching off and going to Inglewood or whatever their new arena is. And so I just think you're going to see it more often, is that it's another revenue stream. You're getting the concessions. You think about how successful the team is. The Celtics certainly make extra money for those playoff games, but you're just never getting the parking. You're not getting the little things that probably do add up when you're talking about millions and millions of dollars of deficit for the amount you're paying for the roster. And yeah, that's going to be a really interesting long-term discussion. And it's not something that's going to happen quick, right? Like just like you guys said, you got to find the land, you got to build the stadium. It's going to be a process, but I do think it's going to happen. If I'm a new owner, I think that's part of it. You want your own slice of land. You want sort of your team to be the focal point of that building, and then you can still recruit other acts on off nights. And I even wonder what that will be like for the Garden and a new arena to have a little bit of a tug of war over that. But ultimately, I wonder how. I just feel like if a new owner comes in and they have the money, they're going to want that as part of the process, and that's going to be a huge storyline.
Ultimately, though, Chris, looking for the here and now with camp almost upon us, you have 3 guys who played basketball deep into the summer. And, a fourth, and one of those 3 guys, Jason Tatum, apparently never went home. He went to China. He's been traveling to L.A. to be on Jimmy Fallon. I mean, and without Kristaps Porzingis available.
He's been writing. He's written a book.
Yes, that's right. He was seen rapping about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is maybe we should expect a slow start to the upcoming season because Porzingis isn't going to be available until Christmas, and you got a lot of guys that played a lot of basketball all year.
So I'm going to push back. I'm going to go when I started looking at the comps, and because we did this thing where we had everybody on our NBC Sports Boston little panel predict how many wins, and everyone kind of came down from the 64 they had last year. But I think the best comp is that 2008-09 team where they win in 2007-08, and they realized the window is still short, nothing is promised. And even though they brought back most of that core, I think Posey was the only guy they didn't have. I think they were 27-2 going into Christmas, and they were just a steamroll through the first part of that season. I think this team has that same potential. They've shown they can win without Porzingis. It certainly adds a layer of complication. But as much as I think they will try to, I just don't see Joe being the coach that wants to downshift guys. And I don't see Tatum and Brown being guys that are yeah, we're just going to kind of lollygag through the regular season. No, I think they're going to want to kind of embrace that and just show how dominant they were last season and keep that going. Certainly, I think, look, if there's another injury as part of the mix, it could be a challenge out of the gates, but they got a ton of depth and they got a ton of continuity. And while other teams are figuring it out, I think the Celtics have a real chance to hit the ground running. I know Joe's going to stress it every day, and it's going to be an overplayed storyline through training camp about the target on their back or the target in the middle of their eyes and all that. But I really I think this team has a real chance to hit the ground running.
All right. Well, Chris Forsberg, listen, everyone loves Spirit Airlines and hates the commute from Worcester to the Garden. Everyone can relate to your everyday man situation. You're very relatable, Chris Forsberg, if nothing else.
I appreciate it. I love you, Spirit.
All right, Chris, thank you. NBC Sports Boston, check them out.
If you like that clip, check out more videos from Toucher and Hardy here. For more Celtics analysis and opinion, hit this playlist. And for all the latest from the Sports Hub, download the app at 985thesportshub.com.